Do you guys remember that video I made back in December? You know, that one from like 5 months ago that I haven't really expanded on because, college happened and, yeah, pretty much that shit. Well, I've been wanting to make this video for a while now, but I never really had the time to make it. And it's on someone who I mentioned in one of my previous videos named Vivipops. Now, for those of you who didn't see that video, why haven't you? Go watch it. It's not too important, but it's always worth, watching another video. Maybe you might enjoy it. Who knows? But today is probably the first time I could ever say I think I've actually exposed somebody. Whenever you expose somebody, you reveal hidden stuff. Technically, you could say that Fetish Too Far Part 2 back in like 2014, 2015 was technically an exposed video, but that's kind of loose. That's really loose. But on, I think, an individual scale, instead of just a bunch of people, I think I can say this is the first time I have. Or at least, as far as I can remember, I've been on YouTube since like 2007, on alt accounts, but still. So, for this video, I'm going to be talking about somebody I briefly mentioned in one of my previous videos, Vivipops. Now, for those of you who don't know who Vivipops is, she draws Sonic OC pinups, whatever. And that's kind of where it ends. In my video, I said her art was kind of cancer, whatever. But I have found some dirt in the past few months, and I wanted to talk about it because of a certain message Vivi sent me whenever I talked about that video. Whenever I talked about it in that previous video. But before I go on, I want to make this clear. What I'm going to show you can potentially be up for debate, and the reason why I'm shining light on this is because, it's a very mixed, I guess you could call it, thing to speak on, because not everybody's definition of one word is, the same. So, why do I mention this? Well, Vivi, from what I've seen and what I have, is potentially an art plagiarist. Now, this word is kind of thrown around a lot, and a lot of people don't really know what plagiarism means, so I'm going to be using some examples, and I want you guys to draw your own conclusions. That's kind of what I want. So I'm not going to keep this too long, I just want to make this clear. Alright, so let's move on to the first example I have. Okay, so this was one of the first pictures I found that I could safely say was very likely to be plagiarized. On the left is Vivi's pictures, by the way. On the right, it's the original, or who I'm guessing is the original. I mean, look, it's kind of hard to, dig through so many, pictures on DeviantArt or other websites or Google to find potential images, so these are just the ones that I could find. But what I do know is that they look pretty similar. They're both of similar nature, of course, which doesn't really help the case. But this was definitely one of the most obvious ones I found. And it's definitely worth noting, even though this picture on the left that Vivi did was from like 2015, 2014, and the other picture was very likely earlier than that. So we'll just let that live from there. Okay, I'm kind of going on a bit of a limb here, but I'm going to use this one anyway. The picture on the left is from, I think, 2013 or early 2014, I believe. But the other picture has been around since like 2010. In fact, it's technically been longer. Now, okay, this one technically can kind of go either way. Some people would say that faces are technically plagiarism, in a way. But it's kind of one of those things that's worth mentioning, at the least, because a lot of people who use bases over-rely on other people. They usually borrow assets from other artists' creations because they can't make their own. They rely too heavily on others, so it kind of causes, problems. And also, this is one of the most overused bases you could have used, that pretty much any DA whore uses non-stop. I don't even know, Pure DLF4, the original person who made this base, even actually made it as a base. I don't even know. Which would technically, if she did make the original base, then this one kind of is in the clear. But if she didn't, then this is plagiarized. Even if you didn't know who the original was and this was just a base someone made, you would still be plagiarizing. But that's kind of up in the air. Make your own conclusions. Okay, this one is pretty obvious. This one was made from one of the previous pictures, which I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking on, since, just to put it this way, Vivi, your production values are pretty fucking low when you reuse the same ones over. That's pretty lame. Okay, so for this next one, it's still kind of a bit debatable. Some people might argue that Vivi just used the other picture on the left, on the right, as a reference. But here's the thing, though. It doesn't hurt to use a reference, but depending on how close you replicate that reference, it can be considered plagiarism, or at least as far as college professors have taught me. So it's at least worth noting that maybe, but it's still up there. It really depends. Again, your own conclusions. Well, Bag. Look at you. In a video about exposing, you still have a hand of just mentioning wedgies again. You're trying to hide something, aren't you? Well, no, I'm not. I'm just trying to show you plagiarism, like I just mentioned. I can already hear it in the comments area, or at least eventually. Okay, so this one is pretty obvious. Pretty obvious. I mean, even as far as using it as a reference, you can tell that there's higher production into the character on BB's, and the blue thing, which I'm guessing is supposed to be underwear, just doesn't look like it. It just looks so awkward. It looks awful. It doesn't fit. Plagiarized, definitely. And then again, your own conclusions. Alright, for this next one, I had a bit of a hard time debating which one was the original. So, of course, on the left, you see the two that are done by Vivi. And on the right, you see the two that I think might have been the closest ones I could find. Considering Vivi is very incompetent with her own style because things just kind of change whenever, it's hard to pin down the exact one that it could be based off of, but I'm going to say both of them just to be safe. Schwiggity schwooty, I'm coming for the booty. Okay, so this one's got two ones that I think are based off the one on the right. There are actually three pictures that are very similar. The first two are just two alternate ones. One with Crystal with her pants off, and one with her pants on, the one you're seeing. And for the third one, this one, it could be, but I also like to consider it part of that base that I showed earlier. I mean, it's still worth noting, okay? You know, continuing to look at Vivi's pictures really makes me just notice how awful she is at proportions. Because maybe she just doesn't know how to draw proportions, or maybe she's just too reliant on others to make her art. I mean, of course, that's still up for debate, but still, with this one, it was kind of hard to see which one of these would be the exact one. I mean, Sci-Fi Jack is a pretty popular one to kind of plagiarize off of. So I kind of have to go on a bit of a limb and say it might be two, it might be a different picture all entirely, but regardless. Well, what do you know? We're back to talking about this again. Okay, so I want you to take note of the arms and also kind of take note of where they are. It's like the picture's flipped, right? Just with Vivi in the back, just kind of squeezed in just to make this better. I guess you could say that. I mean, this picture that I saw was just kind of just flipped. And this was probably one of the most obvious ones I found, which is most likely plagiarism. So let's move on to the next one. You know, the more I browse DeviantArt, the more I really hate Sonic Team for making Rouge. It just seems like they were enabling this kind of behavior. I mean, I don't even think most of the characters from the Sonic games actually had asses or breasts to begin with. I know Amy didn't. I know Blaze doesn't. I know even like Cream and Vanilla doesn't, but then again, Cream's like 6 years old, so that's a weird thing to think of. Only kind of Rouge. That's very weird. Kind of. But anyway, yeah, it's kind of hard to nail which one of these on the right was the one that was used, or if it even is the same one. I mean, again, we can refer back to that base I showed earlier, but then again, just make your own conclusions. Okay, for this one, I'm just going to throw these two back and forth, just so you're able to see what I'm talking about. So let me tell you all the similarities that are in here. First things first, you might notice that the images are both the same size. Now that's not exactly proof 100%, but it's at least worth noting. The second thing is the lines. Notice how the legs and the ass, somewhat, are exactly the same. When I say somewhat, I mean the bottom part, because Vivi likes to kind of make asses, really fat. I mean, that's not hot at all. That's just really weird, trying to make an ass seem bigger when realistically the rouge ass is actually better looking. That's a weird thing to say. But another thing that's also worth noting is the vibration lines. They're in the exact same spot. Now that's a very big coincidence. I mean, make your own conclusions, but this was one of the most obvious ones I found that was very likely to be plagiarized. And this one was recent too. Okay, so all of these ones on the left, it's kind of hard to figure out which one these ones could have been taken off of, considering what we've seen earlier. And a lot of some of these newer pictures I showed were actually, newer. But they were made pretty recently before whatever. Okay, so I couldn't find the exact one, so I'm sure if I did more digging I'd find them, but out of the ones I have or found, these two were on the right, the closest ones. And this one with a horse. So it could be, it could not be, but I'm still throwing it out there. Make your own conclusions. Okay, so I'm kind of going a bit of a limb here again, but I'm still going to include it anyway because it could potentially be the case, So the one on the right, it's worth noting that this was actually taken from a picture Purity LF4 made like 10 years ago. I wanted to try to find the original it was based off of that Purity did, but her account's been gone for like 10 years as well, so it's kind of hard to find it when an account's gone. So, kind of off on a limb, make your own conclusion. Alright, I think that's all I really have to show. There were a few that I didn't include because I couldn't find the exact picture. I mean, again, with millions of pictures up on DeviantArt, and since DeviantArt's been around for like, almost 20 fucking years, it's a little hard to find the exact ones that are plagiarized. Even through Google Images, it can be very difficult. So I'm going to call it the end here. There were a few ones I wanted to kind of mention, but I'm not going to because it's not worth it. I think I've got enough information as it is. Of course, with all this information, I want to restate this again. Keep a bit of an open mind, just kind of, how would I say it? Kind of decide for yourself if you really think. But because this is my video, and I've got all this, I'm going to tell you what I think. Vivipops is a dirty art plagiarist. She's dirty. She's lazy. She's just a complete cunt. That's kind of what I want. Kind of leave it up to you guys to decide. Because, it's good to, think for yourself, see what's out there. Oh, fucking hell. I keep getting these weird calls. Anyway. This is so awkward.